there is a saying that many people respect or adhere to and follow in their hearts in different ways. And in many cases, they're not even aware of it. And that saying is, ignorance is bliss. That which I don't know doesn't hurt me, type of a thing. It's not happening in my, my neck of the woods or in my backyard, so I'm fine, I'm immune to it. Or any of such things where the person is not engaging by reflecting carefully. We call that delusion, we call that moha in Pali, the language. That we read the suttas in discourses. Delusion. Oftentimes it's presented as, delusion, by the way, is also sometimes called ignorance. Delusion is seen, looked upon as something that is passive, that doesn't harm you, that doesn't bring your downfall, or doesn't bring you negative or unwholesome or damaging consequences. That is a big, huge error. It's such a big mistake that by the time that a person realizes that they are at the bottom, they've fallen, it was a downfall in fact, despite what they thought, it's already too late. Why do I say this? Because delusion, you can think of it as a tendency in the mind that creates a vacuum, that creates a pull, an attractive force. Just like in the case of when you exhale all your air out from your lungs, you're just creating a vacuum. Okay? Because now there's more pressure outside the lungs than inside. So you created a vacuum. All of a sudden, it's going to create the opposite effect, where you pull in as much as possible, as much as your lungs can hold, that is, of air molecules back in. Now, in the case of delusion or ignorance in one's life, where that's basically running the show, unfortunately that's what happens, where it's no longer something passive. It's no longer, oh, the person is just ignorance, that they're experiencing, or, it doesn't harm. No. Because ignorance or delusion makes way for hatred to come in. It always will be a vacuum, creating a vacuum, a pull, an attraction. It's like a black hole that pulls into it, into the heart, into the mind, the tendencies of causing harm, which comes from hatred. In Pali we call it vyapada, the aversion, the aversive state of mind. Out of nowhere you become irritable, out of something, happens and you're aversive, you're angry, you're upset, you are rageful. In fact, it accelerates, it's exponential. And the other aspect of it is when you become exceedingly pulled towards lusting after something, longing, basically the opposite side of aversion, which is like a moth rushing head first into a source of flame, a fire, a candle, something, a light source. Like a moth. You don't care, you just go head first, like people who go and cheat on their mates. People who have the tendency of just stealing or lying. lying through their teeth, as they say. Constantly. Because it gives them a high, it gives them a kick, it gives them the sense of, well, excitedness. That raga, or lustfulness, or being always driven by greed, the sense of, I want that too, I want that, I want that, I want that, which in a capitalist, consumerist society, especially with social media and smartphones, and everybody has access to, let's say, Amazon. Oh, I want that. Well, are you going to use it? That are you going to use it part doesn't happen because the person has ignorance running the show, delusion. So the person today, most of the time, when they are not in a visible state of ignorance or delusion, they definitely are in one or, either or both state of greed and hatred, or hatred. But it's so fast, it's so dynamic, that oftentimes they're simultaneously occurring. For this, the Buddha called the three poisons, the kilesas, the three defilements that run a person's life. These are our true enemies. Ultimately, there are no enemies outside of us. These are the enemies that we have to overcome. But it's so difficult because it's so easy to stay in delusion. Why? Not that staying ignorant is a fun state. No, don't worry, because you have the other two states that come in and keep things colorful, because they are the ones that agitate the mind, namely the greed and aversion, hatred, anger. Greed as in lust, wanting this, and the other one disliking, not wanting, refusing, pushing the other thing away. I want, I don't want. These two are the two opposite extremes, which humanity, as such, all beings in fact, seek. But in our so-called perpetual quest, we remain essentially deluded all throughout. Now, we are very careful, I was going to say selective, in the usage of the word wise in this tradition, in Buddhism proper. Wise, because it takes a special curiosity, it takes a special interest, a fervent desire, you can call it, which in Pali it's called chanda, C-H-A-N-D-A, that gives you the impetus, the drive, if you will, to peek closer, to take a closer look at your state of mind, your actions, your behavior. Why, for example, I was using the incident of a person who's about to click buy on Amazon, let's say. Do I need this? Really? I have tons of pairs of shoes. I mean, do I need another pair? Or I have, I don't know, all of the books of this author. Have I read all the books? No. Most of them I haven't read. They're there. Okay. Well, why do I need this book? Well, if I don't buy it, somebody else might buy it and I won't have that copy. Okay, don't worry. Let me look for, read through the other books. The person doesn't do that. I'm giving a very benign example here, by the way. I know. But in your life, you probably have much better examples where you have a chance of identifying these jumps from one extreme of the pendulum to the next. The more you do this, the more you look and probe closely at what is the engine, what is the drive like. Am I perhaps greedy at this point, or am I angry at this point? Are things not going the way I want, and am I therefore agitated? Okay, now we're talking about aversion. The second poison, the first being greed, lust. Anytime you do that, you have pulled yourself out of delusion, by the way, which is great, which means at least one of the kilesas, one of the poisons is coming off. You're getting rid of it. Why? Because now you're developing the beginnings, the mechanism is taking place, it's beginning to happen, the engine is running, where you're becoming wiser and skillful in the application of mindfulness proper. For this reason, I was telling the students the other day how most of the time people don't realize that there is a clear demarcation, a clear distinction between right, correct mindfulness and incorrect, wrong mindfulnesses, systems that people have come up with where they say, oh, we're practicing mindfulness. No, there's only one that is correct. This is, of course, many people don't like it when they are given only one choice, which is very categorical. Well, the Noble Eightfold Path, each of these steps where Samma Sati, right or correct mindfulness, happens to be, each of these is one. It's singular. They work together, of course, but each one of these is categorical. So there's no need for us to look at it, oh, it's controversial. No, it's factual. That's what the Buddha taught. That's what I am conveying here. Well, that's what I'm teaching. So, when there is truly the right effort being applied in pulling out these 3 poisonous arrows from your heart, the kilesas, what you essentially are doing is you're practicing proper, correct sati. Okay, somebody might ask, well, what makes it correct sati, Bhante? Other than the fact that you just stated, it's part of the Noble Eightfold Path. No one disputes that. No one in their right mind, anyhow. But why is it correct? Well, that would be a legitimate question, by the way. The answer to that would be something like this. Or let me say actually in categorical statements. The answer will be this. Sila will develop unavoidably. Directly. The person will become virtuous. Undeniably. The moment you are practicing correct sati, you are practicing sila. It's an immediate effect. It doesn't take 10 years. It doesn't take 10 months, or it doesn't take 10 minutes. You immediately experience why. That's the power of correct, right sati, samma sati. This is another way of distinguishing right sati, which is only one, and all the other forms of sati, which people go and pay huge amounts of money, like these John Kabat-Zinn and all his trying to monopolize and you know, the business model of, mindfulness, MBSR, and people, you know, give an arm and a leg to obtain those basically useless pieces of paper, their certificates. without understanding anything about Sati. Sati, if it's not Samma Sati, it's incorrect Sati. Therefore, Sila or virtue is number one. Without it, there's no way that the person can become wise. You can't have a vulgar wise person. You can't have a person who is not living virtuously being wise. It's impossible. Because the person is an addict towards sex, towards this, towards that. There's nothing like I know in some cultures they've come up with like the wise mystic fool. You know, there was in Zen Buddhism, and I remember when I was very heavily involved in it in the 90s, practicing. There was from the Zen tradition in Japan. There's Ikkyu. He was known as the Zen teacher, madman / lover, where he has written poetry, this and that, talking about his love towards this woman, this and that, while at the same time being a Buddhist monk, a Zen teacher. Meanwhile, very much involved in sensuality. That doesn't happen when there is right sati. Why? Because right sati, as I said, comes with the signature of sila, virtue. Now these two together bring about wisdom, which is the antidote to what I was saying earlier about delusion. You will not uproot, pull out those 3 poisonous arrows from your heart with wrong sati. It's impossible. You will add more poison to your heart, and that's what's happening in the world. You have people who advocate for mindfulness this, mindfulness that, and they advocate criminality. They advocate business savviness to how to make more money, how to do this, and how to succeed this. And there is no such thing with right sati. You're mixing, to try to pick out things that serve you and serve your ulterior motives to make money, capitalizing over it, through it. This has nothing to do with true spiritual growth through proper teachings that we still are very lucky to still have at our disposal. So, sati, that is correct sati, brings about virtuous development in the person. That is not shady, that it doesn't, wishy-washy. It's not wishy-washy. It doesn't flip-flop here and there depending on the circumstances. It's solid. A diamond doesn't stop being a diamond, Even when it gets cut by another diamond. It's still diamond. And when you have these two, sila and sati, those two will support the presence and growth of wisdom. These are the 3 trainings which the Buddha gave us that are truly magnificent in their effectiveness. Nothing comes close to it. It's so simple. We call it sila, samadhi, panya. Sila, I've already mentioned. Samadhi here is a reference to the proper, correct sati. And another thing about why it's called correct sati, because correct sati will take you to correct samadhi. Okay? This is something that's totally I wouldn't say neglected because they never even touch on it. These so-called mindfulness teachers and book writers and all that, money makers, multi-billion-dollar industry. They have no idea because they will never touch samadhi. Again, just like in the case of Sati, here too we have only one correct samadhi. And you have many, many, many incorrect samadhis. We have to remind ourselves that the Buddha came into the scene 2,000, nearly 600 years ago in India, and he had many contemporaries of his who were teaching different forms of samadhi. Unfortunately for them, none of them were attaining liberation from suffering because they were still stuck in the land of perceptions. They couldn't go beyond it. But the Buddha became the Buddha because he relinquished that. He went beyond it because he applied the other factors specifically, because his sila was impeccable. He applied proper satipatthana, correct sati. Through analysis, which we call vipassana. That did not exist. It had not been discovered. Only a Buddha discovers this. And that means that only a Buddha presents to the world the three trainings. No one else. No one else can. Hence, at the time of the Buddha, there were many, many, many forms of samadhi, but none of them were providing their practitioners true liberation. There was some of this, some of that, but you didn't have the correct combination. You had entire sections of it missing. And people kept on banging their heads against the wall or the cave wall to try to attain freedom. They couldn't. They weren't able to. And that's why he, in a short while, he ended up having so many students because there were so many people ready with the right intentions. They had been practicing, but if the method is wrong, it won't work. And here they had an actual method that worked. That's why people went and listened to him. And then they applied it. We don't have that today because people today are not that invested in their own liberation. They are stuck in their delusion. We don't have that drive, that impetus with which these other noble individuals went to the Buddha, carrying in their hearts. They were thirsty for, they were so hungry for the Dhamma. The knife had reached the bone, as the saying goes. They had no other way, no turning back. They had gone past the point of no return, as far as they were concerned. And that's why they were able to break through. Today, people don't feel that invested. You don't need to hear so many Dhamma talks, you know. All you need is the desire in your heart to really understand and to really see and call it out, call it the way it is. Saying, oh, the jig is up, I figured it out. I'm actually seeing myself being addicted to like and dislike. You can't like one and without the other, by the way. Huh? They're the two sides of the same coin. Greed, aversion, and you're dwelling in ignorance, delusion. So you always have the control. You're in the driver's seat of your life, whether you like it or not. Whether you continue to live in delusion or not, you're still in the driver's seat. You can't be otherwise. If you're alive, if you're aware you're alive, on some level, anything, you can move your eyelids, you can eat. Then you're able to make your life mean something. And it only means something when you go beyond the mundane. You're not here to just go through the motions and, go after your pleasure seeking and other automatic tendencies, if you will, or social pressures, this and that. Okay, fine. And then what? That's why many people are so hunched, like walking around like Quasimodo, with looking down, and they just want to make some, their life a little bit more juicy. That's why they reach into this inanimate object called a smartphone, and to deviate their attention, their mundane existence, to create some kind of a color, to create like and dislike, if they don't have anything going on. And most people have nothing, and especially during the last 5-6 years, we've lost contact with other humans, proper contact. We don't know how to look at each other's eyes. We're not even that close to be able to see each other's eyes and the color in the eyes. We don't know how a handshake feels. What is a handshake? People sometimes, what is a hug? They don't know. We don't trust humans anymore. People trust their pets more. And that doesn't necessarily mean the pets are much more than humans, that some people mistakenly say, or we don't even give each other the opportunity because we have become deceitful towards ourselves. Animals are still, they haven't reached that point of deception. They can be themselves. We have forgotten how to be ourselves. That's why we don't live. We just go through the motions. And that is the epitome of living in delusion. But again, you cannot live in delusion and think that you're fine, you're not doing any harm, you're wasting your life, and you're actually doing so much harm to yourself and probably the environment or people or beings around you, or the future possibilities. Why? Because delusion, again, is the vacuum that will pull into itself greed and hatred. So you cannot be one and not the other two. No, this is the terrible trio, which the Buddha called kilesas, the poisons in the heart, the defilements. So, just some pointers may be helpful. Sukhiyot.